thou that sleepest, arise from the dead.
Read the Bible, you'll find out that God's not too happy with what's going on around us.
Redeem the time, because the days are evil.
The Bible has not changed.
Boldly proclaim the restoration and preservation of Christian values in America.
Satan has brainwashed a whole nation.
As goes the church, so goes the nation.
Nobody's convicted of anything anymore.
And now, here's Last Call with your host, B.J. Edwards.
Feels like I've been holding my breath, trying to steal my restless heart. Everything hangs on my next step, finding my nerve, playing my part.
Good morning, brothers and sisters in Christ and fellow travelers. Along with Mr. Anderson, in honor of Mama Jeannie, you're listening to your Last Call, 2 hours of Christian talk radio with a sting. Brought to you by the Natural Family Foundation. As goes the family, so goes the nation. Our call-in number, if you wish to participate, is 614-423-4220. Our show can be accessed on the mmunited.org website if you happen upon us by chance. I'm your host, B.J. Edwards, and this is my world. Mr. Anderson, isn't it fun being a Christian?
It's never a dull moment.
As goes the family, so goes the church, and as goes the church, so goes the nation. One of the things, Mr. Anderson, I'm so grateful for is because of my worldview, I get to deal directly with cartoon characters bigger than life almost all the time. You know what I'm talking about? Seriously. Folks like Coach Dave, who, by the way, will be a guest later on in the show. Matt Truella, who I've met. We had a show with him about, 2 years ago. 2 years ago. As well as yourself, Mr. Anderson. And I guess I could throw BJ into that pot as well, couldn't I?
I think so.
Yeah, we're a little different setup this morning because we're going to be doing a few videos. And we have really a great show for you this morning. We're going to be talking... As always.
Yeah,
as usual. We are going to be talking about the family. And we're going to be talking about the form, one man, one woman, one blue, one pink, in a lifelong committed monogamous relationship with their natural born or adopted children. The importance of that structure. The importance of that family form, but also we're going to get into the structure itself. And it's equally as important. You have to have both. And I have a question for the listening audience today. The question is simply this. What do the pill, no-fault divorce, abortion, gay marriage, child protective services, public education, which we'll be talking about a lot today, pornography, Sharia law, what do they all have in common? Our call-in number is 614-423-4220, 614-423-4220. If you have the answer to that question, or if you just want to call in and talk to a real live cartoon character. I like Mike Huckabee. I really do like Mike Huckabee. I like his writings. I agree with most of it. This week, Mike wrote that this past Wednesday, just 1 month after the tragic school shooting in Parkland, Florida, the House of Representatives passed a bipartisan bill called the STOP, Student, Teachers, Officers Prevention School Violence Act. It allocates $50 million to the states to improving school safety protocols, setting up anonymous threat reporting systems, and I hope someone will pay attention to, and training teachers and police in recognizing and responding to students with mental health issues. It still has to pass the Senate, but consider it got bipartisan support and passed the House by 407 to 110. Maybe it's something that even the Senate will be able to agree on. Now again, I generally agree with Brother Mike. But with all due respect, I think he's a bit out of order on this issue. First of all, this bill is nothing more than a lukewarm, knee-jerk reaction that will do nothing more than waste our taxpayer money. I'm sorry, the problem in schools is not setting up more safety. Did we not see police officers in Florida? There were plenty of opposing guns there, right? Think about this. The schools are still teaching that life has no meaning, morals are relative, man is the measure of all things, and the state is your daddy. We're instilling in these children a humanist, atheist theory that we were basically born out of the primordial sludge. I like to say cosmic farts. And we're going to be talking about men today, so we can make men statements, right? Yeah. But if we teach them that life has no meaning and the morals are relative and they get frustrated, why are we surprised when they either take their own lives or the lives of fellow non-meaning students? Why are we surprised at that? Seriously. Why are we surprised? That has to change first. I had as is my wont, I like listening to other DJs, if you will. And there's a talk radio show in the local area here in Ohio. And I called in, they were talking about, it was Wednesday, they were talking about the students leaving the school for supposedly 17 minutes. Right. They were beamed over and beamed back in 17 minutes, only time elapsed. It was a waste of half a day of schooling. But that's not bad because, well, I don't even want to get into that. But I called this radio commentator, and he wanted comments. So I talked to him, and somebody had tried to call in earlier about God and how God was taken out of schools, and that was an issue, which, by the way, it is an issue. But the radio MC just cut him off short. It's secular humanist radio, and this gentleman is definitely secular humanist. So anyway, I called in, and I tried to explain to the gentleman what I just explained to you, that our government runs schools that are teaching that life has no meaning. And he said, "What do you mean by that?" I said, "Well, we teach them atheist evolution as fact." "Well, all schools don't do that," and just excusing it right and left. And then I said, one of the other things we do is we teach moral relativity. "What do you mean moral relativity? They still discipline children, don't they?" And I tried to make my point, and he basically cut me off, hung up on me. Folks, I'm not going to hang up on you, okay? I will give you... Go ahead, Mr. Anderson.
Well, maybe not.
We won't do it on purpose with our technological expertise. It could happen. It could happen. Is that all you wanted, Mr. Anderson?
That's all.
Okay.
For now.
But, by the way, it's my understanding that Betsy DeVos, you know who Betsy DeVos is, right? The Secretary of Education.
From Michigan.
Mm-hmm. Is being sued by the LGBTQ community, who are demanding that more letters be added to the alphabet because they're running out dangerously low of letters. LGBTQ. Okay, anyway.
Okay, I'm sorry. I should have. They do need more letters. We can add Greek letters.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And wasn't there some sort of a runoff election in Pennsylvania this past week?
Something.
Yeah, and the blue wave is going to take over.
Yeah, by cheating.
Yeah. By the way, the blue wave, most of them don't speak English, or a good portion of them don't speak English. After all the hoopla, the special election for Pennsylvania's 18th District House seat ended with neither side able to declare full victory. The Democrat Connor Lamb, who, by the way, ran as a conservative, he won't rule that way, but he ran as a conservative. That says something when they have to run as conservatives, doesn't it? Somebody's having an effect. but they're still lying. And like Hillary Clinton taught us, not actually winning is no impediment to Democrats declaring themselves as winners. It still looks like the Lamb has beaten Republican Rick Saccone by a razor-thin margin of about 600 votes, but state law will require a recount. So let's settle in and wait on that. And oh, by the way, the Pennsylvania State Department is facing a lawsuit after officials refused to release records relating to non-citizens on voter rolls in the Commonwealth. What? Non-citizens voting? Analysis found that there are allegedly more than 100,000 non-citizens. What was it, a 600 vote difference in Pennsylvania? 100,000 non-citizens that are currently registered to vote in Pennsylvania, according to Philadelphia's official testimony before a Philadelphia official's official testimony before a Pennsylvania government committee last year.
Why do they bother registering?
Just saying, folks.
There's no criteria, right?
Yep, just saying.
Yeah, just show up at the voting booth as many times as you want to during the day and eat lunch there and vote again in the afternoon. I don't know.
You weren't sure about the first one. I got a to-do list, a couple items.
Uh-oh.
But we're going to, by the way, we're going to have a great clip coming up from Matt Truella. And please hang around for that because it's incredible. He talks about the family. Hey, we need to be family strong, folks. And natural family strong.
Family. Brothers and sisters.
I won't ask Coach to sing either today, okay? Why is that circling around, Mr. Anderson?
I think our internet is slow today.
Okay.
I think we're having issues.
Okay.
I don't know. Yeah.
The ACLU has stated you do have a right to participate in the Day of Silence, which is coming up in April, and other expressions of your opinion at a public school during non-instructional time, the breaks between classes, before and after school, lunchtime, and any other free time during your day. That's the ACLU. And, of course, the ACLU is the god of man these days, isn't it? Them and the Southern progressive liberal catch-alls. This site is sponsored by a pro-family group listed below, and they posted this giving parents the tools they need to oppose the Delith Gelson-sponsored Day of Silence, which is coming up in all public schools, most public schools, this April. The Day of Silence, which is sponsored by the Gay, Lesbian, Straight Education Network. This year it will take place in most public schools on April 27, 2018. This has been growing for several years. On this day, thousands of public high school students and increasing numbers of middle schools, and they'll get to the kindergartens as well, will allow students to remain set. You know, this guy that I spoke with on the radio didn't think that government-run schools were indoctrinating children. Yeah. He's living proof that they do. Anyway, they're promoting Gleason's socio-political goals and his controversial, unproven, and destructive theories of nature and morality of homosexuality. Parents must actively oppose this hijacking of the classroom for political purposes. Please join the national effort to reclaim our proper understanding of the role and limits of public education. Help depoliticize the learning environment by calling your child out of school if your child's school allows students and or teachers to refuse to speak during instructional time during the Day of Silence. And when you call your school, and I want to encourage you to call your school, ask them if they're participating in the Day of Silence. Be prepared to explain to them what the Day of Silence is. That's very important. Explain to them what the Day of Silence is. And if they're having it. And if they don't say, I'm not sure, or if they say, well, we're not sponsoring it, that doesn't mean that they're not having it. It just means that they're not sponsoring it. They're not officially condoning it, but they're likely still having it. There's a couple petitions on our The Natural Family Foundation Facebook page. And we encourage you to go in and sign those petitions. Caller, can you hang on? We need to identify ourselves, take a quick break. B.J. Edwards along with Mr. Anderson, your last call. Natural Family Foundation. Natural Family Strong.
Faith, discussion, and so much more. Last Call with B.J. Edwards on WTVOradio.com.
B.J. Edwards along with Mr. Anderson, your last call. I believe we do have a caller. Caller, first name, please, and what's your question or statement? Do we still have your caller?
Can you hear me okay?
I can now, brother. I can now.
I tried to get you on the air just so you know. I'm not sure if everything is working, but I'm glad I got you. Now, is today when Mr. Peterson's coming on?
Mr. Peterson?
I thought I saw that Jesse Peterson was coming, or did I get that wrong?
Oh, we may have a videotape with Jesse Lee on. Yeah, okay. We're not on?
Oh.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, we have we have a audio clip of Jesse coming on later, if we have time.
Well, I guess this is he is the black pastor out in California, correct?
Yes, sir. Jesse Lee Peterson. Absolutely.
Yeah, he is just a wonderful ministry going on out there, taking one black American young man at a time and pushing him and pointing him and guiding him towards being a strong man in the black culture, and he just does a wonderful job. So I would encourage your listeners to support that ministry and to hang around this morning to see whatever you do to promote his ministry, because he just does a wonderful job, one young black man at a time.
Yeah, what we're going to talk about this morning is the family and the importance of it, and we talked about the forum earlier, but what Jesse Lee Peterson is doing is critical, because the men in the family, and folks, the men in this nation, there's just a concerted effort to feminize men, to put them in their place. And Jesse Lee Peterson speaks very boldly to all men, but he also speaks to the black community, where I think that 73% of the homes are now fatherless. That's a disaster. Jim? That's a disaster. Yes, sir.
There is not going to be any cure for urban America if you do not address that issue. You are wasting money, wasting time. That has to be part of whatever is being attempted to revitalize urban America. You can give me all the revitalization of downtown Detroit you want, but you will not have staying power without that issue being addressed in the black community and also in the white community, although the numbers are not quite as bad.
Well, but maybe not as bad, Roger, but there's lack of leadership from the males in the American family, and there are no figures for that. I can't say 73% of married men aren't being leaders in the family, but I can tell you a good portion of them are not being leaders in the family. They've not taken... Go ahead.
I agree with you. And I think one thing that has been resonating with me on this topic, and would appreciate any input from you or your listeners, is this upside down of the family, this dysfunction of the family is purposeful at times. Sometimes the man does not step up, so one could argue somebody's got to fill the vacuum. But I believe that the promotion, the grabbing of the power by the woman is disobedience to God's word. And I just wish we would look at it from that, because we point out all these great sins in the Christian community, but this concept of the woman taking over the family, to me, I don't care why it takes place, is disobedience to the Word of God of what is ideal for him.
Absolutely, Roger. And again, the critical importance of the leadership. Again, we can complain about blacks fathering children and then leaving. I guess fathering isn't the correct term to use, but it's the cleanest term to use. Fathering children and leaving, but within the white community, the white male has not taken the leadership role that they need to have taken, and it's showing.
Well,
it is showing, and that's
Jim, absolutely. In my line of work, I cannot tell you and Kevin the number of 27 to 29-year-old men who come in who bring their mommy. I cannot express to you how often that happens.
That's you're a lawyer, right?
Well, don't hold that against me.
I get very few people to admit that when I ask them. But you do see it in the work environment, and you see it in other work environments. I've been in the other work world, the business world, and I've seen mommies as well come in and support their son. And it's just, I mean, I never thought anything of it when I first saw it. But now that I'm looking at this total family situation, I'm seeing how critically important it is. There's a reason, and this started in the garden, and we can blame Eve all we want, but Adam is the one that chose to make a decision whether to eat that apple or not. And he watched as Eve was eating the apple. Watched her. And probably, okay, you go first, Eve, and let's see what happens. Well, Eve didn't die, so I guess I can take a bite out of it too. Look, it's different. Go ahead.
No, that is exactly where it started.
Yep. And it's continued along, and Satan, our adversary, is continually beating on this. We've got the Me Too movement. Now, I'm not about men, and when you're talking about men taking leadership in the family, I'm not talking about carrying a club around. I'm not talking about that at all.
Well, and neither am I. I'm not talking about barefoot and pregnant.
Yeah.
But there is, whether we agree or not, the Bible explicitly talks about hierarchy, roles, and that you can't get away from that. You cannot teach the full gospel of the Bible without understanding the role of male and the role of female. And I'm sorry, it's there. And there is a huge responsibility for the male in his leadership role of the family and the church and the community. But you cannot get away from it. Is there. It is part of God's Word from page 1 to the last page.
I know of, and I don't, it's something we have to do, but I know of groups that are encouraged divorced fathers to spend more time with their children, even though the wife is no longer in the family. Now, I don't like the idea of how easy it is to get a divorce in America today, no-fault divorce. But the fact that they're recognizing the importance of the father, the man, in the child's life. I don't know how all this is going to work out. It's not going to work out, I know, as well as a father being in the family and taking his rightful role, and the children seeing that. And the children do need to see that. The only authority they see in our life is women and government. That's the only authority. They don't see men as authority. And they actually see themselves as authority, and that's causing a good bit of anarchy, and that's going to have a price to pay as well. Roger, go ahead.
Yeah. No, well, think about, we've talked about the school system, but let's think about the typical Sunday morning preschool through 6th grade. Who are all the teachers in preschool to 6th grade. I'm sorry,
Women.
it's all women.
Yep.
I mean, they're the young man, the young boy, the preschool boy in school is surrounded by ladies, and church is surrounded by ladies. He might get to some male influence on the athletic field. It is a little wonder. It is a little wonder we've got such dire problems. And I don't mean to sound pessimistic, but if you do not go after that issue, and all you do is keep having building campaigns and remodeling campaigns and let's give free food at Thanksgiving, you're doing nothing to get to the problem.
And by the way, we're not talking about all women. We're not talking about all women, so please don't misunderstand. But we're talking about a general theory in America, and I suspect a good deal of the world, where the lack of need for a male in the family is predominant, and how critical it is. So this isn't all women. This isn't all women, but
Well, absolutely, and I agree with you, absolutely. But that being the case, we can't hide from the problem.
no, we can't. We can't. We need to focus. This is the goal. It's like the natural family. I was in a meeting in the inner city, and I talked to them about the natural family: one man, one woman, their own children, etc. And they almost ran me out of the meeting. And I said, whoa, wait a minute. I said, wait a minute. No, seriously. I said, whoa, wait a minute. I'm talking about the concept of the natural family. I know that in America, maybe 5 to 10% of the families are that way. And you go, well, what are you talking about, BJ? Well, look at this. There's a 50% divorce rate. So if you're divorced, you're not in a natural family. Then there's the pornography. Then there's, I'm going to give my secret away. I can't say anything more. I'm answering my own question this morning. Anyway, it's the importance of the family, but the structure as well is just as critical. And that's what this program is about this morning. It's about the family, it's about the form, but it's about the structure and the importance, and it's about what's happening in America. And what we need to do, those that quote-unquote get it, what we need to do today, what we have to do today, and we can't shirk that responsibility. I want to get to Matt Trewhella, because Matt has some very important points to make. Roger, always appreciate your call. Appreciate you, brother. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
And this is BJ Edwards, along with Mr. Anderson. Your last call. Some time ago, got a little wordy on that call, didn't we? Yeah, we'll just play through the break. Here's the break. BJ Edwards, along with Mr. Anderson. You're listening to your last call. How about that? Huh? Pretty special. No technical difficulties with that, Mr. Anderson?
No, that was one technical difficulty, my mute button.
You're mute? Yeah.
You asked me a question and I couldn't answer.
Yeah. We had Matt Trewhella on our show a couple years ago, and he talked about the lower magistrate. Through his research and teaching.
When it was appropriate, we had Kim Davis at that time.
Yeah, that's true.
Things were going on. He presented a good case for that.
Yep. That basically is saying that there is incredible power in lower power magistrate. In other words, if the boss isn't doing the job, they aren't being constitutional, they aren't being biblical, then you have the duty to tell that individual that they're doing wrong and take over that role. And this is legal. Take over that role. We don't practice it, but it is legal. Take over that role and take care of business. Matt runs a Wisconsin group called Missionaries for the Preborn, which you can guess what that is. And has been working to bring what he calls the doctrine of the lesser magistrate, which I just kind of butchered, which holds the elected officials have a duty to interpose to stop enforcement of laws that they believe violate the laws of God to elect officials around the country. Matt is sort of kind of a throwback. I had a great conversation with Matt this week, a great conversation. I wanted to get him on the show live, but he has a previous commitment, and I understood that, but we'll get him on soon. He is well-researched, well-read, and well-grounded, especially when it comes to the family and its role in our society. He has 11 children. He tells an interesting story, which you'll see on the tape today. Mr. Anderson, can we play that tape for Matt?
Yeah, we
Let's get
can.
you turned around here. We can?
We can.
Okay.
It's a little spotty. I'm sorry. The technology is just not where it should be today.
Okay. Let's get the camera turned around here. And we're going to be listening to Matt Trewhella and the importance of the family.
This is Last Call with BJ Edwards.
I'm not going to be talking about civil government matters this time. You know how passionate I am about that. I'm also very passionate about what I've been given, and that's family. And I don't know what you're supposed to say about being a courageous family, because we're just a family. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about family to you, and then we're actually going to have other people from our family come up. My wife's going to talk for a few minutes. I have a granddaughter that's going to talk for a few minutes, and then my son-in-law is going to come up and talk for more than a few minutes. I'm only going to talk to you for like 15 or 20 minutes here. And as you can see from our picture here, which I can't see, so I'm trusting it's up there, yeah, children are big to us, massively huge. And as you know, we live in a country that's committing familial suicide. Come on. All you have to do is read obituary sections and realize people have like no children hardly, no grandchildren, no great-grandchildren. We live the whole West committing familial suicide because we're abrogating the creator order of God regarding having children. When me and my wife married, we had 2 and we were like, bam, bam. And I told my wife, I said, okay, well, I'm getting a vasectomy because if we have any more kids, I'm either going to go insane or we're going to be broke. And she's like, oh, no, I want to have more kids, you know, blah, blah, blah. Well, she went along with it. And I went in and got a vasectomy, and it was a miracle how the doctor was. Because he says to me, do you want it, or do you want it where there's at least a chance you can get it undone? Because once you do it, it doesn't always work. It often does not work when you undo it. But he just gives you at least the chance. And I said, oh no, I'm never undoing this. And the man literally stood there like this for like a minute, which is a long time when you're in a room alone with someone you don't really know. And so he goes, I'll only do this if you let me do it where there's at least a possibility of undoing it. Wow. I really believe that was the providence of God. I really do. Because as I continued in the faith, God had a different view of children than I did. And that the church does. And that our nation does. And so I was able to get it undone. And there's 10 years between our second and our third child. The greatest investment of our life. We ended up with 9 more children. So we had 11 altogether. Amen? So he blessed us exceedingly. Now I want you to know there's a huge war going on against the family in this nation. Amen. And it's being conducted by our own government. I love talking about this type of stuff. It comes back to the old question, is it the corrupt morals of the people that changes the law, or does the government change the laws to corrupt the morals of the people? Understand what I'm saying? Yes. And I'm here to tell you, when you study history, the Greeks, the Romans, other people groups down through history, our own nation, often it's the government that changes the laws to corrupt the morals of the people. And that's what's been happening in our country for decades now. It's been by design to belittle and disparage the family in America. Amen. So I want to show you this little book here. I think it's a book. Is it blue? Oh, okay. By the way, my kids are getting all married. We had 3 marriages in 10 months. So 6 of our kids are married now, and we have 18. So the Lord's truly blessed us. So we can end up with 60 or 70 of those. Yes. So the blue book is up there, right? Okay, this is a book by a guy named Carl Zimmerman. Carl Zimmerman wasn't a Christian. He was a sociologist. I love reading sociology. If you know anything about sociologists, they do one of 2 things with Christianity. They either had nothing to do with Western civilization for 2,000 years, or they act like it had everything bad to do with Western civilization for 2,000 years. His book, just as an honest man, and he shows much of the good that Christianity brought to Western civilization. And so in 1947, when he wrote this work, which I can't strongly enough to read, it's what I use in my marriage counseling with people who are preparing to marry and also people who are having trouble in their marriages. This is the book I use to give them to read. Why? Up out of our present milieu, where marriage and family is disparaged, belittled, and demeaned, and gives you 2,500 years of history so you see your role is as a man, as a woman, as a husband, as a wife, as a father, as a mother. In 1947, he decreed we would soon see divorce for any reason or no reason at all, no-fault divorce, came in the late 60s, early 70s, that we would soon see legalized abortion, 1970s, and that we would soon see rampant homosexuality throughout America. Need I say more? He based that upon his studies of the Greek and Roman civilizations, the French and Bolshevik revolutions, and other people groups. And he said this, he said, this is the tipping point when nations or civilizations destroy themselves. He said it's when the people no longer want to have children. And he said, I don't mean by that zero, although there are those, he said, but I mean they only want one or two. America, last year, 1.93 per couple. You need 2.1 according to demographers per couple just to replace yourself. We're not even replacing ourselves. What the Muslims couldn't do to topple the West with the sword, they're now going to be able to do following the created order of God, while Christian West abrogates the created order of God. And Zimmerman said this, he said the reason that's the tipping point is he said because when men want to be husbands and fathers, and women want to be wives and mothers, it produces within people virtue. But when men don't want to be husbands and fathers, and women don't want to be wives and mothers, it produces people vice. And so the culture begins to destroy itself, and it takes a long time. From the time the Greeks didn't want to have kids, so they fell to the Romans, 150 years. The Romans didn't want to have kids until they fell to the Germanic hordes, nearly 400 years. America has been like this, steep decline, and we're having for 150 years now. This isn't a new phenomenon. It's been going on for a long, long time. We are destroying ourselves. And Zimmerman talked about the fact that we're in what's atomistic culture. That's a term the sociologists use, which means the individual is paramount. Family is demeaned, belittled, and the laws reflect that demeanment and belittlement. It's designed to weaken the family and strengthen the state. Now let me show you another book. Can we change that real quick? This is a black cover, right? Libido Dominandi. You get this book too. It's a great resource material. It's about that thick. You don't have to read the whole thing. Just read the first 120 pages. After that, just the year and the location changes. It's all the same script. And what it is, he shows from the time of the French Revolution to the current times, governments have shown a propensity to want to promote sexual consciousness. The subtitle, Libido Dominandi, in other words, you're dominated by your sexual urges, Libido Dominandi, is sexual license and political. And he shows how governments have shown a propensity to promote sexual licentiousness because they know it makes for more easily controlled people in the end. So you have to are at war. If you want to have a strong family, you're going to do it on your own. There's nothing left in this culture to help strengthen you. Most churches won't even strengthen you. And what, certainly not the government, certainly not the culture at large. Your commitment to Christ is paramount in your ability to have a strong home. To keep your relationship with your wife or your husband, whatever the case may be, strong. Hugely important, and I want to encourage you in that. Now there's a couple quotes I want to share with you regarding Libido Dominandi by Aldous Huxley. Aldous Huxley said this. He said, as political and economic freedom diminishes, sexual freedom tends... Is he gone, or is he able to change that? Okay, it's up there. So he's busy. We don't have a little flicker thing, so we're stuck doing this. As political and economic freedom diminishes, sexual freedom tends to increase. Huxley said this back in the 1930s in his book, The Brave New World. And the dictator, unless he needs cannon fodder and families with which to colonize empty territories, will do well to encourage that freedom. This is the thinking of governments. They want to promote sexual licentiousness amongst the people. The next one, John Taylor, I encourage you to read anything he's written on education. He said, in sex, marriage, religion, family, the training of the young, and anything goes ethic was introduced steadily through the schools, a development that undercut any opposition from traditional moral centers by dividing the children in school from the traditional sources of moral training at home. The whole big divide between this whole culture does it from the very beginning. They put a promotion into women's head that the way that gives you value is having a career outside of the home. The whole idea of being a wife and a mother who nurtures the family and is a helpmate to her husband, totally belittled, diminished. My wife's going to talk to you. I remember not too long ago, they did this thing on Barbara Walters, you know, like making all the young women in the country there, oh, I want to be like Barbara Walters, you know, with her wonderful career. And they put on the pedestal, right? I'm thinking to myself, my wife would beat her in an arm wrestling match any day of the week. So, yeah, these are done by design, this whole matter of the government. So we live in this atomistic culture. You can flip the next slide. It probably in order to weaken the in order to strengthen the state, you have to weaken the family. You know who knows that? Every good statist you'll ever read. I read leftists, and they all say this. They hate the family. They call it things like the concentration camp. You know, that's what they are wicked. Yeah. They're evil people who want to destroy anything that has even the semblance of Christianity attached to it. They're at war with Christ. So anyways, getting back to this Zimmerman guy, because it's awesome. If you want to understand that they're at war with the family, what are the three great intents of marriage? Indissolubility, fidelity, and children. Right? Indissolubility. Marriage is till death do us part. Look what they've done with that. Serial marriers everywhere, you know? People just, I'm not happy. Created Christians who, this is their theology. God wants me happy. I'm not happy in my marriage, so clearly God thinks it's okay that I get divorced. I've run into that as a minister so many times. It's nauseating, and ministers aid and abet it. Amen. That's the sad thing about it. Secondly, fidelity. In other words, you only have sexual relations with your spouse. You don't try to win the affection of any other. Well, we've actually criminalized adultery. No one's charged with adultery in America. That's laughed at. I remember we had a guy in our area over in Milwaukee. He actually started banging on the windows of his house because his wife was inside committing adultery. He ends up getting arrested, find out he's an off-duty police officer, and he actually got removed from the force. And I listened to all the people calling in on conservative radio, you know, and they all thought he was wrong for acting that way. Why? Because we live in this atomistic culture where the individual is paramount. You put yourself above everyone else. And when men do that, they destroy themselves because God didn't design us for that. And the third thing is children. Like, I didn't want to have kids. I shared my little thing with you. I learned so much. And why'd you have to have 11, Pastor Matt? Well, I'm a slow learner. He kept giving me more and more and more kids. I learned so many things that I would have never understood as a man. And what's important to him, if it wasn't for all these children he gave me and my wife. Just a tremendous, tremendous blessing that way. So listen, here's what says. He says, having children, quote unquote, he says, civilization grows out of familialism. That's having a family. In other words, family is the foundation of live in what is called an atomistic society that focuses on the individual. Families demeaned and belittled, held in low esteem. Zimmerman points out that adultery, divorce, and homosexuality, listen to this now, this is huge insight. I love to read certain sociologists because they come to biblical conclusions just from looking at the nature of man. And they always, the honest ones, and they get suppressed by most because they're just Christ haters. But from their studies on human nature, they find that monogamy is the best form of, the best way for man to live. Monogamy, a man and a woman married with children. It's the best way for us to live. It produces the most productive cultures that the earth has ever known. Okay? So anyways, Zimmerman points out that adultery, divorce, and homosexuality are not the causes which destroy the family. Rather, they are the symptoms of a society that has decided against family. That's the tipping point, when people no longer want to have kids. So it isn't like divorce, homosexuality, adultery is the thing that's destroying family. The reason those things are here, people don't want family to begin with, because it's about me, myself, and I. That's the mindset of the culture in which we live. He says, in family relations is not important because of its symptoms, but primarily because of the decay of the basic components of social life. Once people are being raised in single parents and all the other nonsense that's going on at these times, 2 men, 2 women raising children, insane, that breaks down the social norms that God intended for man in this planet. Man's desire not to have children is the engine that results in man's corruption and demise. Man's focus on the individual becomes the very thing that destroys him. Zimmerman then quotes Aurelius, who said, quote, "That which is not good for the beehive is not good for the bee." In other words, individualism feeds on itself. When one person divorces, others are more prone to do so. That's a fact. Those are studies that have been done. You probably know it anecdotally from your own relationships, watching life go on in your own life. One person divorces, are more prone to do so. One hangs in there and makes it through. Others are more prone to do that then also. As society becomes wealthier due to its monogamy and hard work ethic, is granted to the individual. At first that helps build the wealth as freedom is seen as an opportunity for economic gain. But then, Zimmerman says, quote, "the freedom changes," unquote. He goes on to say, quote, "the individual, having no guiding moral principles," you can go ahead and flick the thing, "changes the meaning of freedom from identity to license." And that's what freedom means to most Americans today. You're free to practice any sexual perversion you want to practice. I won't say nothing about it. To practice my form of sexual. That's what they think freedom and liberty is in this country now. It's wicked. Zimmerman says the result is misery, and the individuals then begin to change the social institutions to aid and abet their freedom through law, policy, court opinion. They change the institutions, the laws, policies, the court opinions, and to remedy the consequences of their sinful lifestyles. And that's what so much is about now. We're like in this huge ball of, wax. It's like you ever take a baseball apart, you take off the outside, and there's all this string. Like this little round ball in the center. We have so much string around what was supposed to be right and normal for our culture that people don't even see how bad things are. So they're trying to fix the consequences of their evil lifestyle. I remember watching America's Most Wanted one time. No, it was America's Most Wanted. Cops. Remember that show, Cops? And this guy goes in, the cops come in, and the mother, "Oh, my husband and my son are in the bedroom, they're fighting. Oh, it's just an awful thing."
And he's talking.
So, the camera goes in, and they march in like this, and the father and son are rolling around the ground. Teenage cops break them apart. And the whole time, the mother's saying, "I don't know what happened. He used to be such a good boy. And now look at him." And the whole time, they're standing around the room. It's got the most audacious rock and roll posters. This kid's feeding on filth, on garbage, and she doesn't get it. While there's consequence of her son and her husband rolling around in the ground. Understand? And that's what we have a whole culture full of right now, and it's insane. So I want to encourage you about a few things here. How much time do I got? I didn't even notice you over there. 2 minutes? Okay, let me cut to the chase. One is, do this. Educate your children yourselves. Don't let your children that they need them to succeed. Come alongside your children. Help them in what God's given them to do. College is way oversold. Amen. And it's okay to go or whatever, you need to go, but most of the time you don't need to go. You got some self-initiative, you got an older person to help you along, you'll do just fine, right? So anyways, we love to go out to and we homeschool our kids. And I run into this all the time at the university. Somebody comes up, I have my kids with me, And they're like, why aren't you in school? And my kids will say, oh, I'm homeschooled. And they say, oh, you're homeschooled. Your parents just want to brainwash you, you know? So I've learned over the years that it's often good to ask a question when someone's acting dopey like that. So I ask them the same question every time. I say, well, let me ask you something. Do you think education's comprehensive or selective? And they're kind of like, you know, never. And so I go, well, after 5 or 6 seconds, you know, I'm gracious. I say, well, let me tell you, I think education is not comprehensive, but selective. And to prove it to you, you can go to the library, right? Walk in and have that overwhelming feeling that I could spend the rest of my life just in this one library and not read all the books in this one library, let alone all the libraries of the world. Hence, education comprehensive, it's selective. And now the only question is, who's going to select what my children learn? Their mother and I or the state? Come on. You know? And for like 80% of them, amen. For like, it's like light bulb, you know, light bulb. It goes on, you know, Despicable Me. My kids watch light bulb, and they're like, okay, it changes the whole dynamic of the conversation. Like, okay, this guy has rational reasons for why he's doing what he's doing, and they put down their stereo. I always tell people, when you go to university, one of the biggest things you're doing is de-goblinizing yourself. Because as much as not lest you be judged, they're judging you all the time. They get you totally stereotyped, and you have to spend time with them in order to de-goblinize yourself. So, I'm 57, lost my train of thought standing in a room full of people that I'm speaking to. But whatever I was going to say was really, really good. Whatever it was. So,
and
you got me.
BJ's back.
I think. Let me check the camera out here. Got about there. I think we're about there. We're good. We're good. That was Matt Trewhella, and he's talking about the family. And one thing I want you to note, and I would get the book, the Carl Zimmerman book. I would get that book. I have it. I ordered it when I saw Matt. I ordered that book the next day. Ordered it the next day. 1947, Carl Zimmerman wrote about the family. Now, 1947, divorce, nah, wasn't running rampant. Abortion, wasn't running rampant. Family services, wasn't running rampant. What happened? What happened? And it was by design. And I'll say it was a conspiracy, but it's a spiritual conspiracy. Satan doesn't like the United States of America. He has no reason to. We were dedicated to God, to Jesus Christ. And he knows, like he knew in the Garden of Eden, how to destroy the family. You go after the husband and the wife. In this case, he used the wife. But think about all the things that I mentioned early in the program and what they all affect, or what they're all trying to affect. They all have a negative impact on the family. That is why, ladies and gentlemen, we're losing our nation. We're losing our nation because we've lost the concept of the natural family, one man, one woman, lifelong, committed, monogamous relationship. I was watching a Law and Order, I think was the name of the program, and the lady, as a lawyer, was talking about her daughter, and her daughter was talking to her mom about, well, having sex. And the rationality was, well, if you really love him, or he really loves you, or you really like him, then go ahead and have sex. Really? Is that what it's about? And Coach Dave comes on. He's going to talk a little bit about that in government-run schools. But I just want to stress the importance of the natural family. That's the key, folks. Everything else we're seeing out there, in my humble opinion, is a symptom. And we can take care of those symptoms, but until you get back to the family, that's the core, that's the foundation. That's what everybody's been chipping at. Think about it. Satan knows the importance of it. Why don't you? Especially if you're Christian. Mr. Anderson, did you know that there was an encyclopedia for American loonies?
American loonies?
Yeah. I swear to God, there's an encyclopedia for American loonies.
I haven't seen that one on my bookshelf.
Matt Truella is on that. And they were talking about him. One of the telling characteristics of religious right to distinguish from the mainstream religious right, is their 2008 reaction to Sarah Palin's vice presidential candidacy. While roundly endorsed by the religious right, Truella and his ilk complained that a woman would not be suitable for the job. And let's see, because I'm a sexist? No, but because I'm a theist, Matt is answering the question as to why he was that way. We have an election coming up, by the way. And I'm seeing an awful lot of women running for office. And are going to get elected to office. Well, what's wrong with that? Are you misogynistic, BJ? And again, I can't wait till Coach gets on. But Coach is going to tell you something that we all know. That in general, women act on emotions. Men act on logic. And they talked about Donald Trump having his finger on that switch where he could throw the bombs at the rest of the world. Do we want somebody that's an emotional with their finger on that bomb? I wonder how many listeners I've lost so far.
Having one of those days during the month. Sorry.
Well, yeah. Well, anyway, this gives you an idea of what this creature is about. They're talking about Matt. He doesn't like gay people either. Indeed, he hasn't restrained himself much on his criticism, not only of the gays, but those who choose to abhor the gays like he does, and disgusting parents who don't protect your children from the filth of homosexuality. He has at least admitted that he wants homosexuals to be arrested and imprisoned like they used to be. Most wingnuts won't go that far. His organization, Missionaries to the Preborn, is militant and sufficiently scary to make it to our list. And Truella has signed the Justifiable Homicide petition defending the murder of, this, by the way, this is published in 2008, defending the murder of children, murder of abortionist providers. He has also been associated with the U.S. Taxpayers Party, Constitutional Party, whose patriotism bordered on the terrorist. It goes on and on. Here's some of the comments that people were given to this. Matt, he's an angry, sick man. One of the worst people on the list. Refuses to buy his family health insurance because with the shekels come the shackles. Or some paranoid right libertarian nonsense. I once heard him report on Mrs. Obama's school meal plan, and he apparently wasn't worried too much about whether students were getting bad tasting food as he was that they were getting free food at all. Listen, it's parents' responsibility to feed their children, not the state's. Oh yeah. His pro-life group has terrorist ties. So there's that too. Loon Encyclopedia. Our guest today, Coach, is on the Loon Encyclopedia as well.
Is he really?
Yep.
When's BJ going to make it?
I'm disappointed. I got to get a lot more effective. We're going to take a break here in about a minute. And I want to talk to you maybe about getting your mind right. Anyway, we'll take the break. Hopefully Coach will be calling in here shortly. Princeton professor, toxic masculinity at the heart of the gun culture. Princeton professor of religion and African American studies, Eddie Glaude, argued in a recent MSNBC appearance that toxic masculinity, whatever that is driving America's gun culture. Claude first blamed politicians for their complicity in Americans' obsession with guns. The male of the species. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. B.J. Edwards along with Mr. Anderson, your last call. Going to have Coach Dave Daubenmire as our special guest for the second hour. Faith, family, and discussion. I hope you're recognizing the importance of the natural family, folks. It is what it's all about.
Faith, discussion, and so much more. Last Call with B.J. Edwards on WTVOradio.com.
This is B.J. Edwards along with Mr. Anderson, your last call. Apparently, a student at the University of Pennsylvania, Indiana University of Pennsylvania, is that an oxymoron? Has been barred from a religious studies class he needs to graduate this May and asked to apologize after voicing his belief that there are only two biological genders. The student contends that he is being punished by the university for his response after the professor of the class on self, sin, and salvation showed a TED Talks video featuring transgender woman Paula Stone Williamson. In the video, this transgender woman discussed her previous experiences of manhood as well as her current experiences of womanhood, in which she gave accounts of things such as mansplaining, male privilege, sexism, and alluded to the reality of gender wage gap, stating women work twice as hard as men for half as much. After the video ended, the professor opened the floor for discussion in which the student voiced his objection to the use of one's personal anecdotal accounts of the previously mentioned experiences as fact. And he then proceeded to point out that the official view of biologists is that there are only two biological genders, and then mentioned that the claims were made in the video were far from empirically supported evidence. A lively class discussion ensued. The bottom line is that this young gentleman was asked to sign a piece of paper apologizing for what he said, the truth, and is now faced with not graduating from the university because of his views. So sad. So sad.
We have a caller.
Yep. I imagine that's Coach Dave Daubenmire.
It is, and it isn't sad. Why is it sad? Something would be sad if it occurred without anybody having had the opportunity to do anything about it. That'd be sad. It'd be sad if a tree fell on my grandkid and killed. That'd be sad. It'd be sad if somebody went left to center and hit me as I'm driving down the road. That'd be sad. It'd be sad if I had a heart attack in the middle of the night. But it isn't sad when we sit back and let them cram it down our throat and we don't do anything. So it's not sad. That's not the right choice of words. And it won't get you very far because we've all been so feminized and won't say what we really believe. And as I often try to tell people, JR, if your speech isn't free, you're not free. And we're not free. Our speech isn't free. Our own side attacks us. The enemy attacks us. They call us names. And I'm gonna go down standing up, and I'm gonna go down saying what I think. I think that's what liberty is all about.
I don't know whether you were aware of it or not. I sent you an article yesterday, I think. But there's actually an encyclopedia of loons. Are you aware of that?
Yeah, that's sad, isn't it?
An encyclopedia of loons. And they generally have Christians that stand up for the Bible and righteousness listed.
Well, because see, we don't understand this, and I go round and round with. I just go round and round with it. If Hillary Clinton had been elected, we wouldn't be laughing about this stuff, brother, because it would already be down around us. So the only thing that's happened now is as the cupboard became bare, they opened up the door to it, and we see what's in the cupboard. And so now they're bringing out everything that we possibly can, and these agendas they've already been in place. They've been in place, and they were going to go ahead and they were going to force these agendas upon us, and that would have been sad if we would have let that happen. But a strange thing happened. President Donald Trump got elected, man's man, Man's a man hated by Christians because Christians men aren't men. Christian men are women. And so when Donald Trump began to speak up and speak boldly, and maybe he used language that wasn't very Christian for him. See, our side didn't want to vote for Donald Trump because he wasn't very Christian. They'd rather lose. And that would be sad if that happened. But what happened is he came out and began to confront the very things we're talking about here. He challenged the status quo. He said global warming's that's not real. That's not real. Hillary ought to be in jail. That's not real. Hillary wants to chop up babies. That's not right by me. He actually stood up. Whether you want to debate whether or not he's a Christian, he actually stood up and became a man. And a lot of people scratched their heads, turned their hats off, scratched their heads, and said, gee, gosh, I remember when men used to talk like that. Ethel, you remember that? You remember when men used to talk like that, Ethel? Well, by gum, we got us another one here. That's what happened. And in the meantime, the church, it's sad, isn't it, Jim? JR, the church sits back and lets the devil cram this crap right down our throat, and the church won't stand up because the church is full of women and men who act like women. And that's the magic of Donald Trump. And go round and round again, Christians saying, how can you vote for a guy who slept with prostitutes? And, well, I'd say that's probably about 50% of the American population, to be honest with you. And he did that before he became president of the United States. As far as I know, he's not dinging any interns in the overall stuff. I don't think he's doing that. I don't think he's leaving any guys sitting on top of a building over in Benghazi. I don't think he's doing any of that. I don't think he's selling out uranium. I don't think he's doing any of that stuff. But see, Christians they're more offended by what somebody says than what somebody does. It's an amazing time which we're living.
The Loon Encyclopedia diagnoses you as homo-hateful, abysmally ignorant theocrat, pretty loud, so he's apparently made some impact. Coach, you used to be a teacher before you got into Pass the Salt Ministries, and most of us know the history about that. And you've been invited on several occasions to go back into the classroom. I know you were there this past Wednesday, and you relayed that, and we get a chance, we're going to play that clip today for our audience. But you also went in there, and Wednesday, I know you stirred it up. I know you. I know what you do. I know how you do it. I've seen you in action there. I know you stirred it up. So you went back in Wednesday, or I went back in Friday after going in Wednesday, to speak to another group of students. First of all, did they let you back in the door?
Oh, yeah, they did. They did, and I'd set them up pretty good, JR. So first thing I addressed when I went back in there, again, I was in there on Wednesday, I went back on Friday. First thing I addressed was their lack of respect. That I was a 65-year-old man who'd come in there voluntarily, and the way they had treated me 2 days before was reprehensible. They had no respect for elders. They had no respect for somebody who came in of his own free will, didn't get any money for it, and had to sit there and listen to little sassy, little teenage know-it-alls try to put me in my place. And I did such a good job of it, JR, that one of the girls was especially she was an especially strong Jezebel, and I went right at her, and I went at her hard, putting her in her place to the point where the other snowflake girls in the room were blushing. And actually, have you ever seen that where they put their hands in front of their face and push air in front of it? They could not believe that a man was talking to her like that. And then that led me into the whole snowflake thing. And so they call you, I said, America's laughing at you guys. They're laughing at you. They're calling you snowflakes. Why? Because you melt at the first sign of heat. And if you think what you're feeling here from me now is something, you wait until you get out in that real world. And if you think bullying is bad here on social media and all that kind of stuff, you wait till you get out in the real world and you're battling to earn a living, and the government's coming and they're bullying you about what you can believe and what you can't believe. It was JR. It was one of my finest moments.
Well, I remember Wednesday what you talked about. Now the girl that you talked to, was this Friday when you talked to this girl, or was it Wednesday?
This is I zinged one pretty good on Wednesday, and surprisingly she wasn't back yesterday, and so her defender, her fellow Jezebel, her fellow whatever, might be her time to pick up the mantle and come at me, and I left her cut and bleeding, but it was good. And so I said when I was done, I said, listen, I said that while she was sitting there, I said, you see what just happened here? Huh? See what just happened? When some snotty-nosed 18-year-old wants to tell me what I can say and what I can believe, who does she think she is? And JR was amazing because the boys were quietly clapping their hands because they'd never seen anything like it. Nobody ever seen anything like it. And I showed the entire class how a woman who is out of order should be put in place. She was powerless. She sat there like a little pussycat the rest of the day.
Wow. Wow. That'd be worth paying to see.
Oh, I wish I could have filmed it. It was spontaneous. I hadn't planned to do it. But she opened her mouth one more time, and I just went right over and put my hands on the desk. Some would say I've invaded her space. And I invaded her space, and I said, you know what? I looked her right in the eyes. I said, you are very unpleasant, young lady. You're very unpleasant. Brother, I went at her, and I went at her hard, and I exposed her to everybody, her lack of respect, her ignorance, everything. And it was probably the best lesson that I taught the entire day. Now, I don't want people to think I'd be mean to an 18-year-old girl. She was clearly out of place. Her daddy should have been doing what I did to her. But her problem, I don't know if she had a dad. But I can tell you this, brother, no man had ever spoken to her like that. None ever. And it was a good lesson.
But what does she see in society, Coach? Isn't she mimicking what she sees in our society today?
Sure she is. So I was trying to show them a little bit of Charles Bronson, a little bit of John Wayne, a little bit of Clint Eastwood. I'm trying to show the boys in the room a little bit of what it used to be like. And as much as we know this, or don't know this, most of the entire educational system, church in particular, church mainly, main desire is not to offend anybody. Well, brother, I'm offended, and I'm not going to take it anymore, and I'm going to shoot back.
Coach, when I was growing up, and when I was in college, I was the Betty Friedan program was strongly in effect. I'm okay, you're okay, everybody's equal as long as you aren't offending anybody. Yep. And I was taught that when you bring up a family, everybody's equal. I mean, I'm not necessarily the head of the family. Everybody's got to say at the council, everybody's equal, and that's the way I thought it should be. And most men of my age and under were taught the same thing, and were exampled the same thing, to the point where we have in America today pretty much that same thing in the household, or we have the woman that is basically the head of the family.
JR, that's why athletics is so popular. It's the one place a man can get excited about something and support something and stand up and scream and yell about it. It's really the last vestige of manhood, and they're doing everything, especially in football. They're doing everything they can do to get away with that, head injuries and danger. They're doing everything they can because they know that some powerful dynamic takes place inside that huddle. Most of the women have never been in one, not a real one like that where there's physical contact going on. And that's the one place. There are several places, but football in particular is one place where men are still being trained to be men. And they're doing everything they can do, brother, to try to do away with that one as well.
Well, it's interesting. I see this as a potential opportunity for those men that are looking down now and going, "Gosh, that describes me," and I didn't exclude me. I said that describes me.
But you want to, JR, they won't say that. See, they'll say there's something wrong with me.
Yeah.
For them to admit that that's them that would be a devastating moment for them.
Do I become your enemy because I tell you the truth, right?
Right. It's easier for them to agree with their pastor that I'm just a little bit too radical. And they can come in there and they can sit quietly in their pew and in their tiny skin jeans up on the stage, and they'll feel okay. I'm the dumb guy. They're all okay. And it just permeates everywhere, brother. It's awful. Awful.
But this may be an opportunity for yourself and folks like myself. When I think of the socially popular people, I think about somebody that's formerly gay. That's different, and people are attracted to that. Or we talk about Jesse Lee Peterson. He's a black conservative? Whoa, wait a minute. And then you've got the activist mommy. But having a male husband stand up and declare that he's the head of the household, might be just as outrageous as these other things I'm talking about.
Well, JR, how about this? On my little show on Friday, not only did I declare I was the head of the household, I brought my wife on, and she sat down beside me, and she declared I was the head of the household. You don't see that very often, do you, brother? I mean, that we just don't see that. She and I are co-equal partners, but I'm the boss. When the decisions have to, when it comes down to it's a 1-to-1 vote, I'm the deciding vote. We do everything together. As a husband and a wife, we are one in the flesh. We're one. But sometimes the vote is 1-to-1. And so whose vote matters more? It does. In my house, it's me. And that's a good thing because it takes the pressure off of my wife. She doesn't have to make the difficult decisions. She doesn't have to come to the point where, are we going to do this or are we going to do that? And God, if we do this, and this will happen. Oh, I just don't know what to do. So I say, honey, just sit down and relax. This is what we're going to do. I'll make the decision. That's love. That's protection. Other than that, hey, I don't come in my house and this may sound awful. I don't wash dishes. I do sometimes. I don't come in and cook. I don't do that. She would get mad almost if I did. She would like it if I washed the dishes probably, but if I came in every night and was cooking food, she'd find a new husband because that's what she does, and it's what she does well. And so this whole idea that they've tried to, pound down our throat that to be a man of the home means you rule the family with an iron fist. Well, brother, that isn't Christianity. That's not what we do. It was Admiral Rickover, I believe. I'm paraphrasing. But he said basically this: when it's all said and done, and whether the venue is a success or not a success, when it's all over, if you can't point at the guy who was in charge, then there was never really anybody in charge anyway. And so that's the responsibility of a man, of the man of the house. I'm the one responsible. Good or bad, why would anybody lay that decision on their wife? At least if it goes bad, I say, honey, I did the best I could. I thought it was the best decision. I'm sorry. Rather than her having to apologize to me because she made the wrong decision. No, I'm the man of the house. I'm the protector. That's why the natural family is the way it's supposed to be, brother, and that's why they're kicking so hard against it.
I got you, and you're going to lose your Promise Keepers badge if you keep admitting that you don't do dishes and you don't cook.
Yeah, well, you know something else I was thinking of too, JR, while you were talking? It's funny how the Holy Spirit works in your heart. I love Tim Tebow. I'd be so proud if that was my son, and I think probably most Christians would feel that way. But can I tell you something, brother? What is it? Why do they love Tim Tebow? Is it because he's a stand-up guy and firm and uncompromising, or is it because he just stands up and accepts everything and loves everybody and forgives everybody?
Takes a beat and keeps on ticking. Yep.
Yes. That's right. So they love that because in their mind, that's the image of a Christian man.
That's a man's place. That's a man's place.
I love it when he bowls in from the 2-yard line and runs over the top of 4 guys and then stands up and holds the ball in the air. He was a conqueror in that moment. That's what I think a Christian man's supposed to be, a conqueror of Christ.
And you aren't the boss in your family. There's an Ephesians 5 thing you might be leaving out here, or maybe the people are leaving out here, because it's Jesus Christ, then you, then your wife, and you do something that is very important that most Christian men don't do, and it's part of the reason that we've lost the home, is that you actually do a Bible study and pray with your wife every day. Yeah. I stumbled on it, I think, brother. I can't take credit for it, and it doesn't make me a better Christian than anybody. But I remember, maybe it was at the Promise Keepers. Maybe I read it. Maybe I saw it on a video. I'll never forget. The guy who was speaking said this. It was John Maxwell. He said, you become intimate with whom you pray. Ooh. You become intimate to whom you pray. And you become intimate for whom you pray. Wow. My wife cannot remain mad at me if I'm praying for her. I cannot remain mad at my wife if I'm praying for her. And so to actually lay hands on her and verbalize your prayer
I'm telling you, my friend, it softens a woman's heart. It is that covering. It is that protection that she yearns for. Sometimes she doesn't even know what she's yearning for. But maybe it'd be different in your house, JR. My house, my wife melts when I do it, and there's a tremendous love bond that occurs when I lay my hands on her, and she does it to me. Sometimes I'll just be sitting around doing something. She'll walk by and she'll put her hands on my shoulders or hand on my head and speak a word over the top of me. And remember, you become intimate for whom you pray, with whom you pray, and to whom you pray. And I think that's been, among many things, that's been a very, very important part in the peace in our home.
God is so good, Coach. God is so good. And what you're sharing is just incredible. And I was going to say, please repeat that, but you went ahead and repeated it again, because the praying with and whom and about gives you a tie and also gives you a spiritual bond with upstairs.
What if somebody says to you, hey, I want you to know I'm praying for you every day? Mm-hmm. That means something. It means something, doesn't it? Yes. And people say that, and they're not really praying for you every day. So I could tell my wife, I'm praying for you, honey, or I could go over and lay my hands on her and verbalize what I'm feeling in my heart towards her, and it brings us closer together. And I'm not. This is not about self-aggrandizement. I know you guys understand that. But I have guys come in. I had a bunch of guys come into my house, 6 or 7 of them here 2 weeks ago, and they all said the same thing. Man, what peace there is in your house. And that's not by accident, brother. That's not by accident.
Amen.
We have ourselves a hot mess here in America. And the men in America, and I love Jesse Lee Peterson because he's black, so he goes after the black community, but he also talks to the white community as well. And the black community fathers children and then just leaves. Mm-hmm. The white community fathers children, stay, but they're not really in a leadership role. How do we go about, because if the men, and this is the men's job, if the men don't take responsibility, then we're not going to get anywhere. It's a game, set, match. It's over with. How do we get the men from point A to point B? And it's a tough question because it's very complicated. But maybe the answer is very simple. I mean, praying with your wife and doing Bible studies if you're a Christian, but there's going to be some Joe the plumbers out there that aren't going to have that advantage, but can still make that move. Any suggestions, Coach?
Yeah, it's a great failure of the church, JR. Maybe the greatest failure of all of the church. They're not trained men. You go to a men's breakfast, let's say at your church on Saturday. You go in there and you do you eat your eggs and your sausage, and they have a speaker, and that's men's ministry basically in most churches. And the truth is, men aren't trained that what they're supposed to do is after you hear the sermon on Sunday, spend the next 5 days of the week or the next 6 days of the week with family devotionals, where you sit your children around and the children learn from the father what the father learned last week in church. You know, you mentioned the activist mommy. We've been friends for a long time. She and her husband, Patrick, Dr. Patrick, we've been friends a long time. And, brother, they have family devotionals with all 10 of their children every night. They sit around, they open the Word, and they discuss the Word, and then they pray for one another. Brother, see, we're not even taught. Well, first of all, we're taught, what are you doing having 10 kids? What are you doing? Instead of taking the 1 or 2 that you haven't. JR, I know you probably look at your family. I look at my family. I look around me. My kids are having families, and boy, if I could go back and do it all over again, I would do a much more important job, not of just living my faith in front of my kids, which I've always done that, mm-hmm. but more importantly, training and instilling my faith inside them. And I think for too long we've trusted somebody else to do that. We've trusted the pastor, the Sunday school teacher, the youth leader, and you can probably say amen, JR, that didn't work very well.
Do you love your children, Coach? I mean, can a man love his children?
Yeah, sure can. A velvet hand. I got a velvet fist, brother, and that's how you do it. That's how you do it. If you love them, you train them, and I don't listen. My dad never taught me to He said, go out there, start the lawnmower, get out there and mow the yard, will you, boy? No. I can remember as a very, very young kid, Dad would start up the mower, and I would walk in front of him. Between his arms, he'd grab up high on the mower, and I'd grab down low on the mower. And we'd walk down through the yard, mowing that straight path down there and turning around and coming back. And I learned how to mow the grass under the arms of my dad. Well, shouldn't we learn how to serve the Lord under the arms of our fathers? And for some reason, we're not taught to do that. Men are not taught to do that. And I think it's part of the great inadequacy that we see in young men, especially when they go to college and lose their faith because they never really had it in the first place.
It's a great picture you drew, Coach. Great picture there. That the teacher in you is coming out, and you were talking about the men's groups and the breakfasts they have, and we get fat on food and fellowship, and we have so much of it, but when it comes around time for the family, we're just too tired. We can't get out of the chair to help out.
No exercising of it, brother. No exercise, and you know, I don't blame men. I mean, I do. I don't blame them. We just, you know, who put their arms around them as they grabbed the mower and walked with them. Anybody do that for you, JR? Anybody do that for you, Mr. Anderson? You look back over your whole life. You went to church. You sat there. You took your family there. The pastor preached. You went home. And did anybody show you how to walk through this when you were mowing this grass? Which things to mow around, and which things not to step on, and which things the mower can handle? And don't go there because the grass is too high, and stay away from that because there's rocks there. Did anybody ever do that for you in your faith? And I would say if they did, you're very lucky. Probably if it was a coach, teacher or coach. But for the most part, our fathers were terribly, terribly negligent in it because nobody told them that's what they were supposed to do.
And the astounding thing is that I'm where I'm at and you're where you're at in spite of that.
Yeah, but took a rebirth, though. And, you know, I was just thinking, I'm looking out my window here at my house. My little grandson, he's just turned 2, I think. I mean, he's right at that age. My wife would get mad if I didn't remember. I think he turned 2 in July. And, you know, he came to my house the other day, and I said, come on, David, we're going to go down. We're going to throw some rocks in the creek. And he went down there. He couldn't even hardly get the rocks into the creek. And finally, I saw him grab the hold down his little wiener. And I said, you have to pee, David? He said, yeah, I have to pee. So you know the rest of the story, right? We didn't walk back up the house in the bathroom. I taught him how to pee in the creek.
I was hoping you wouldn't share that story this morning, Coach. But thank you. We appreciate that. Brother, I know you have a busy schedule with the family, and I appreciate you taking the time today. We're going to show the clip, a little bit of the clip of you and what you were talking about with what happened in the schools. Fellas, don't get discouraged out there. This can be done through God. It isn't going to be easy, and it's going to get you out of your comfort zone. But for heaven's sakes, at least try it.
You know, JR, he can do a wonderful work in a quick period of time. If we just begin to follow some of the right precepts and the right principles, the Lord can do a miraculous work in a very short period of time. We just got to trust Him to be able to do it. Take a step, and yeah, it'll be uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable, but it's all good.
He is doing it. I see it happening.
Hey,
yes, sir.
My best to you and Michelle. And we'll be praying for you, Coach.
Bless you, brothers. Enjoy the show.
All right, thanks.
Bye-bye.
B.J. Edwards, along with Mr. Anderson, the Coach Dave Daubenmire, who's on the Goon Encyclopedia list. Dave Daubenmire wants to ban divorce as well as gay marriage. And Coach Dave is not only sick of these things he sees on TV, he's also sick and tired of being sodomized by the left.
Me too.
Yeah.
I stand on all those things.
Yep.
Or against them.
When we come back, we're going to take just a quick identification break. We're gonna play. Coach has a show, not a show. He has what I call a Bible study every morning at 7:00. I'd recommend it for you. And Jesse Lee Peterson is on from 9 till 12. Eastern Standard Time every day. I recommend that for you, and I recommend this show. And the family's so critical, so important. Please catch that, and then let's work together. B.J. Edwards, along Mr. Anderson, your last call.
keeping you informed. This is Last Call with BJ Edwards.
Mr. Anderson, I want you to get that clip up fairly soon. And while you're doing that, by the way, if you want to call in 614-423-4220, especially if you've figured out what the answer to the question is that we gave at the beginning of the show. If not, I'm going to reveal it very shortly. BJ Edwards along with Mr. Anderson, your last call.
I forgot the question.
Well, get the tape up, and I'll dig the question back up. I got it buried under a stack of paperwork. Love Coach, love his heart, and man, is he bold. Is he bold?
He is that. Well, that's how coaches are.
Yeah, they are. He's a coach, for crying out loud. What do you expect? He knows what to do at a creek, right? All right. You got that up?
Not yet.
Okay. This is Coach. Coach goes to schools, like I mentioned earlier, and he talks to the kids. And they get a dose of manhood, basically, is what they're getting a dose of. And it strikes some people one way and some people the other. Here we go. Coach Dave Dobmar.
Let David come in here and share with us as well. Let me make sure I'm doing what. Yeah. And so I walk in the classroom, and the room first class had about 35 kids. The second class had the same number in the last class. So about 150 kids we spoke to yesterday. As soon as I walk in, they give an announcement saying, over the PA to all the students, all those interested in taking part in the gun, whatever it was, are to leave the classroom at 10 a.m. Okay, you don't have to go. So some of the kids said, no, I don't want to go. I want to hear this dude me until I got gone. And then some of the girls who are the fastest ones to get mad, they left. So here's what I did. It was great. Hey, JR, those of you out there who know that who understand going into this classroom is what it's all about, I want you to know I left yesterday encouraged for the first time ever that I've gone to these schools. I usually leave very, very discouraged and say, boy, are we ever screwed, because the kids are forever lost. I saw something yesterday that I have never seen in the 15 years of going into that classroom. When I was done in every class, when I was done and all the students left, I was surrounded by young boys, young men, maybe I'd call them that, young men. Amen. Who came up to me, and see, they didn't have the courage to speak up when all the bossy girls were in the classroom. I'm telling you the truth. They didn't have the courage to open their mouth when all these bossy, vicious women were in there. But as soon as the class dismissed, they came forward. You know what they asked me? Where can I get one of those hats?
Great.
Where can I get one of those hats?
I hope you have.
Because here's what I did. It was so powerful. Let me back up a little. So the girls get up, and it's always the girls, right? And the boys who act like girls, they get up and they go out at 10 o'clock. They go out and do whatever with guns. So they walk out, and I said, hey, I got a question to the kids that left in the classroom. Kids in the classroom. I said, is there anybody in here in support of guns? Because Isaac Newton taught us the law of relativity. I think that was one that taught. He said, for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. There are two sides to everything. Is there anybody in here that is in support of guns? And some guy over in the corner, everybody's looking, he kind of raises his hand like this, right? I said, are you for guns? He kind of nodded. Now spotlight's on him. Oh, he's about ready to wet his pants because, again, all these bossy women around there. Oh, you love guns more than you love kids? Is that right? You hear what's coming at him, right? So he's cowering. I said, is there anybody else in here? Anybody else that likes guns? And then a couple more boys' hands, a couple more of them went up. I said, great. When are we having the gun rally? When are we having the students for gun rally? When's that going to be? They looked at me. I said, yeah, come on. Let's go to the principal and let's organize a student rally for guns. And they looked at me and said, can't do that. I said, what do you mean you can't do that? So they won't let you do that. What do you mean they won't let you do that? Let's go do it. Let's say we want to have a rally for guns. So I got off to a good start. So then I got up in front of the class, and I drew a great big, imagine this. I drew a great big cross on the board. Great big cross. And at the top of the cross, I put the word truth. Truth. And then over on this side, I wrote the word right. And on this side, I wrote the word left. And I said to them, I don't care where you fall on this spectrum, whether you're right or whether you're left, ultimately, what you believe doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is what, Mr. Alphabet Man? Truth. The only thing that matters is truth. So you can establish your position over here against guns, and you can establish your position over here for guns. And the only thing we want to know here, the only thing we're interested in is, do guns save lives? That's true. I said there's two ways we can get to that. We can get to this truth two ways. Number one way, and I wrote up on the board, feelings, emotions. Then I walked over on the other side and I wrote down logic. And I said, now here's what we're going to have to try to decide here today. I don't care which one you're on, but your feelings will betray you. Got that in there for you, Chad. Your feelings will betray you. And I want to talk to you today, since we're trying to do a scientific study here about transgenders and homos and beanos and all that stuff. I'm not interested in your feelings. Is it okay if we go to some facts here? Can we go to science? Would that be okay if everybody would use science? Well, of course they do. I said, who can understand? You understand logic? Do you guys understand what a logical argument is? And they look at me like, no, of course they don't understand. They understand transgenderism, but they don't understand logic. So I said, well, logic is A plus B equals C. And I said, A means you eat too much, plus B, you sit on your butt, equals, and somebody said, fat. Yeah, that's logic. A plus B leads to C. And you could say A plus B plus C plus D leads to E. You can do that. You can put a lot of information in there. And if you think about it logically, science is logic. Science should guide us to what? I said, what should science guide us to? And some kid in the front row, he's bouncing up and down like he ain't never heard anything like this, you know. He's bouncing up and down. He says, well, it should lead to truth. I said, yeah, it should lead to truth. I said, do feelings always lead to truth? Have you ever been in love with a girl? Or how about this, girls? Has some boy ever told you he loved you and then you found out he didn't? And you were drawn to him because of the way you felt? And then after he did whatever he did, you found out that you had been misled by your feelings? They're scratching their head. The girls are really ticked at this point because they want to do everything by feelings. And I want to promise you
this is good stuff,
the
folks.
entire
Good stuff. B.J. Edwards along Mr. Anderson, your last call.
Feelings. It is no longer logic anymore in the school. No longer.
You could pick that up on Coach Dave Live archives and hear more about that. I want to make Roger happy.
Right. You want to do Jesse Lee Peterson? Do we have to listen to Jesse Lee Peterson's too?
Well,
I mean, that's an awful lot for one day.
Not getting a lot of BJ today, but
that's okay. That's okay. This is Coach is incredible. Jesse Lee is incredible.
We're just sharing a lot of good stuff today.
And my fans tell me I'm incredible. So hey, you got 3 Incredibles.
You are incredible, BJ.
Thank you. Thank you. But
love you like a brother.
You have to put these pieces together. There's help from Jesse Lee Peterson. There's help from Coach. There's help from BJ. I'm gonna pound on you about the natural family until you get it right. I am one stubborn son of a gun.
Well,
God knows that. Boy, does he ever know that.
I wish we could get it right out there, and these wayward dads and fathers and
the keys in the home. Take a look at the home. What do you have to do to fix the home? What you don't put water in a gasoline engine, and you don't put anybody other than the father as the head of the family. And behind every good man is a good woman, ladies. So prop them up. Quit trying to stand on them. Prop them up. They need your help. They're facing incredible odds. The schools, the news media, businesses promote women, promote women, promote women. They can't understand why there's so many unemployed males. Yow. You got Jesse up there?
I do.
This is Jesse, and he's interviewing somebody. Is that right?
Yes.
Rollo Tomasi.
Yes, he authored a book, and his topic's why women want real men.
Yep.
Arr,
So man up.
yeah. Deodorant and everything.
America. If you don't rebuild men, it's over for America. The Brotherhood Organization of a New Destiny, we have been rebuilding the family by rebuilding the man, showing men how to turn back to their proper state of being. And more people now are starting to be concerned about this, and I'm glad about it. We got to focus on men. I have with me Rollo Tomasi. Rollo Tomasi. He's an author, speaker, and blogger known as the Rational Mayor. His website is therationalmail.com. Rollo, welcome to the show, sir. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, thanks for having me, Reverend.
I really appreciate you being here. You can call me Jesse.
All right, then.
Your website, therationalmail.com, mentioned demystifying intersexual dynamics. Why are so many men mystified by women?
I think most of that comes from what we call blue pill conditioning. Okay, I come from a community of writers called red pill writers. And what we get into is when children, mostly boys, are raised, they are raised to pedestalize women and womankind through, an education system that teaches them to take themselves off of that pedestal, not, to not make themselves their own mental point of origin and to make women their mental point of origin. I think that it's been a progressive process for, probably at least the last maybe 40, 45 years to prioritize women and womankind. And I think that as a result of that, more and more men became more and more confused about that because they've been feminized for, over the years. I would say at least for the last 4 generations, maybe 5 generations now.
Why are fathers and mothers of these boys and men allowing this to happen to their sons?
In a lot of cases, I would argue that for the most part, those men, those fathers themselves are the product of that blue pill conditioning, the product of a feminized education. And when I say education, I don't just mean in school. I mean through the media. I mean through through the popular music, popular culture. Pretty much any way that a boy can learn, because it's not just in the education system, which is already, in the Western society is very, very feminine correct right now is what I call it.
Mm-hmm. At the time that this is happening to men and boys, or boys and men, are they aware that they are being turned into women, or are they being made in the image of women?
I don't believe so. I think that when a child, when a boy, say about 5 years old, enters into an education system, and they always say that, children, when they're 5, right around 5 years old, they're like sponges. Yeah. And so they're picking up all kinds of aspects of themselves and developing a personality that is going to stick with them for, in most cases, most of their lives. So I think that right now, I'd say since the sexual revolution, since the late 1960s, up to where we are right now, if you look at the amount of women teachers that are in Western, public schools, at least right now, you will see that 77% of teachers from the time that a kid is in kindergarten all the way up through the time he, finishes college, 77% of those teachers are female.
Does this sound familiar?
And I would argue that is part of the socialization, really a social engineering design, really, to feminize men today.
That's amazing. when boys are turned into girls and then later become women, is it possible to overcome that?
I believe so. But I would say that it's one of the reasons that writers such as myself and others, it's one of the reasons that we're finding a receptive audience right now. If you take writers such as myself, or you take writers such as a guest you just had on not too long ago, Alexander Cortez,
yes.
or if you look
by the way.
and if you look at people such as Jordan Peterson right now, they're reaching what we're calling now a generation of lost boys. And those boys, or those young men, and men, even older men, are searching for some sort of direction. They're searching for some way to really recapture what masculinity really means to them. And I think that the disservice that we do is we obscure and we blur what I call conventional masculinity is, to these guys. So they get to the point where it's like they're defining it for themselves, and
this is just confirming, not just, but it is confirming what we've been talking about for the entire program. We'll get back to it shortly. But for every action, there's a corresponding reaction. We talked about proportionality bias the other day. Be very careful, men. I mean, I want this I want this show to get you to grow a little hair on your chest and a little fuel injection in your system, but it's got to be run through the correct channels. I want to get you all excited about getting back into manhood, getting back into the leadership position you need to be in, but you need to do it. Well, just don't throw it on a wall to see what sticks. Okay, use your head. You've got some logic too. I know women get most of it, but you got some logic too. And yeah, women remember all those dates and men don't, Coach. I understand that. Let's get back to Jesse Lee. This is good, great stuff.
That just whatever fits them is masculinity, and they're okay with that. Some of them are even taught. Young boys are taught to loathe their own masculinity.
Yeah.
They're taught to hate being male, and they're taught that what I'm in my book. I argued that we teach today we teach boys as if they are defective girls, because we're teaching them in a style right now where only a girl is going to excel in that teaching methodology right now.
That's amazing. I've had Jordan Peterson and Cortez on this show, and you're right about them. They're working on it. My thing is, why did white men wait so long to get involved in this issue? For the last 60 years or so, they have turned black men into women, and not all but most. And if you notice, most black men are very angry. They're very emotional. They're not individuals. They don't know how to provide and take care of themselves. And white men had to see that was happening to the black men. Why didn't they get involved before it got so far down the road for them by looking at what was happening to black men?
I think that a lot of that has to do with white men adapting to this new situation. Once the sexual revolution happened, we were talking about a generation of baby boomers who were called the free love generation. And I think that once this dynamic change, this social dynamic change between men and women, men tended to believe that they no longer had to worry about what I call their burden of performance. And it's my belief that men have a burden of performance. They have to perform. We are always judged by what it is that we can do, and how well we perform, and how we go about doing that is just dependent on whatever context that man happens to be in. But it used to be that being a provider and being a good, what women used to call a good catch, that used to be enough. That used to be enough for men to be able to have a wife and a kid, and to have a solid what we call a nuclear family. All of that's out the window right now, because we take care of women to the point where we have resource transfers and wealth transfers from men directly or indirectly to take care of that side of women. Yeah. So the only thing that's left for men is to make themselves as sexually appealing as they possibly can. So you will now see that men prioritize their looks, they prioritize their that side of it. What I call hypergamy with women is where their focus is. And so there's no longer that need for performance. And that's why we see this dropout, this lost boys generation right now, because they don't feel like there's any necessity for them to grow up. There's no necessity for them to take the risk of what marriage has become in that interim.
Amazing. I often wonder, what do society expect to happen if they destroy masculinity? You have a few books under the Rational Male title. What is called one of the books is called Positive Masculinity. What is positive masculinity?
Well, I've written 3 books, and you have to understand the core before I get into positive masculinity. I've got 3 books. One is the first one is The Rational Male, and that was based off of my blog and just sort of collecting and putting all of those all of what I thought the most important essays that I've written into that book. So that's sort of the core works, and then everything that follows from that ends up being like sort of a supplement to that core works. And one of those, my most recent one, which is the one you're talking about right now, is called Positive Masculinity. And I wrote that because there is such a negative perception today of masculinity. And that's if a man can actually accept that masculinity could be positive in the first place, because we're always adding qualifiers to masculinity today. We're always saying it's toxic masculinity or it's hyper masculinity.
Yeah.
And this is a result of, again, what I call a feminine imperative, trying to dictate the narrative and dictate the definition of masculinity to men.
Rollo, let me take a quick break. 888-76, folks. We're going to.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Mr. Anderson.
You want your mic on, you said?
Yeah. Hey, if you get on Jesse Lee Peterson's show, or if you know Jesse Lee Peterson, tell him about the Natural Family Foundation. Tell him about Last Call, B.J. Edwards. Tell him about Coach Dave Daubenmire. There's strength in unity. And I don't know whether Jesse Lee knows about us, but we certainly know about him. And he's a key factor in what we're doing. Now, keep in mind, the male is a large part of this, but that's not all of it. I had asked the question early in the program, what did the pill, no-fault divorce, abortion, gay marriage, child protective services, public education, pornography, and Sharia law all have in common? They all chip away at the foundation of nations, and the foundation of nations is the family. And I'm talking about the natural family, not the modern family, for God's sakes. Not what we're trying to reinvent, what we find in nature. And like I said before, I'm hoping this will grow some hair on a few chests out there. But don't go be pounding it yet, fellas. You got to earn the right to do that. In order to resolve an issue, you have to recognize a problem. There are a tremendous amount of symptoms, and I just mentioned a few out there. Not everything affects the family, but most of it does, by design. It's a conspiracy.
And that ain't no theory.
Right. It's a conspiracy. And you have to recognize what the problem is. We live and die, nations live and die by the family. Matt Truella is involved in other ministries. But I can tell you from the conversation I had with Matt the other night, he knows the critical nature of the natural family. He knows it. He shared some information with me, some other research materials, which I'm going to use in the book if I ever get it written. But I'm
going to start getting a whip out.
Yeah, you're going to have to. But it's so critically important that we as a nation recognize the importance of the family and recognize the structure that it needs to be. If you're going to build a building, you have to have the foundation. But if you're going to put up those beams, those structure beams, That's going to be your father. And we talked about fatherhood on the show a lot. It's so critical. I had issues growing up, and I don't know, 50, 60% of the people I talked to, I thought it was just me. First of all, Satan likes to isolate you. I thought it was just me, that I was a bad person, and I didn't deserve a good family. And then I start discovering that other people have had very similar situations, or no father at all. It creates a vacuum, and I can tell you that, with all due respect, there isn't anything humanly possible to fill that up. And sometimes we men and women go to extremes to fill that gap. Paddock, the gentleman in Las Vegas, they're still trying to figure out what happened to him. Well, let me tell you, fellas, he didn't have a father. And what father image he had was horrible. His father was in prison. And I can tell you that Paddock spent most of his life trying to fill that hole. And with today's society, it gets even more confusing, because he sees the gap, he feels the hole, but he feels guilty about trying to fill it up. Because we're all supposed to be okay, right? I'm okay, you're okay. We're a diverse nation. Nobody's more important than anybody else. Everybody holds equal values. That's not so. That is not so. That's proportionally out of balance. Well out of balance. And what I'm hoping today on this program is that, number one, I can establish the importance of the natural family, what it's composed of, its importance. But here's the most important thing, is that you go out and you start trying to practice, and you're going to make some mistakes, okay? You're going to get your helmet turned sideways, that slobber knocker. It's going to happen. It's going to happen because the other team's coach is going to tell his players to do that to you. They're going to hit below the waist. Expect it. And then get up and smile, fix your helmet, and get back into the game. This is not going to be easy. It is not easy. And it's probably going to be a lifetime job for you. But what better vocation than to be a father? I don't know of one. I don't know of one. And I'm setting my sights high, and I'm focusing on that. And I just want to encourage everybody out there to do the same thing. The family is key. Men, you have a very important role in that. But women, you've got a very important role too. You need to recognize, accept what your role is. Look, if I had my choice and you gave me responsibility as versus influence, I take influence every time. I want to sit in that back room. I don't want exposure. I don't want to be responsible for anything going wrong. Give me a break. Who wants that? Well, guess what? That's what I'm supposed to have.
But we all have a really tough job, and we you know, when we didn't start out right, you know, when I started out as a dad, the instruction manual wasn't handed to me right away, and it was live and learn, and to go back and try to not only fix what we did wrong, but to point that out so our boys, our sons, daughters, don't continue the same mistakes. And the older we get, the older they get, the harder it is to undo some of those things. And ladies, in the old saying, you know, behind every great man
is a great woman.
Is a great woman.
Yep.
You know, you can make your man great. You can make your man a good father. Whether you're still with him or not, you can still encourage that relationship between the lost boys.
You can fight him, or you can fight with him. You can pray apart from him, or you can pray with him. I think if you get anything out of this at all, what Coach said about praying with your wife, with your family, and for your wife, and for your family, is incredible. Hey, B.J. Edwards along with Mr. Anderson, we appreciate you listening to us today.
Oh my, it's that time.
Yep. As goes the family, so goes the church, and as goes the church, so goes the nation. As goes the family, so goes business, news media, entertainment, you name it. As goes the family, so goes the nation. God bless y'all. Have a great weekend. Go Bucks.
Got to get that in there, don't you? There could be a game between Michigan and...
Join us Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern for Last Call with BJ Edwards on WTVOradio.com.
Locked up again on me.